I can say more than anything, I've learned to take responsibility for the gift more than anything else. I think that has been the most pronounced for me.
Welcome to Becoming Better with Jeff Ponders. We deal with who we are, where we've been, where we're going, and who we're becoming to get there. It's time to leave your ego at the door and deal with real life. It's time to become better. Man, it is so good to see my big brother.
You too, bro.
So welcome to the Be Better podcast.
Yes.
Welcome to the Become Better podcast.
Yes.
Where we talk about who we are, where we've been, where we're going, and who we're becoming to get there. Okay. And I am honored to have one of my favorite people, my big brother, Mr. Darnell Kendricks, in the house. Darnell, we met a long time ago.
Yes.
We both had black hair.
Yes.
And now one of us still has hair, and the other one is struggling, and we both are facing the salt shaker effect.
Oh yeah. I'm all salt. You know.
No, you still got a little bit of pepper up there.
It depends on where you look. It's like every day. It's just
Oh man, I had a guest on a previous episode who he came in and was excited because he had his first gray hair.
Oh wow! Oh my goodness!
Hey, look at this! But no, it's been cool to be able to spend the better part of the last 2 decades maturing as brethren.
Yes.
But man, it's an honor to have you here. You are what I consider a cultural savant. I often have described you as a 5 senses artist.
Yes, you have.
You sing.
Yes.
You write.
Yes.
You do amazing work in the kitchen.
Yeah.
You have taken up visual arts as well, and your approach with visual art has been one where it's not just about the actual sight of the art, but it's actually about the experience when you touch it too. So it's again, it's multi-sensory experiences. Even going back to cooking, like you cook, and it tastes good, it smells good, it looks good, the conversation feels good. So now we're talking about getting to like 6th and 7th senses. Because now we're talking about feeding souls.
Yeah.
So it's amazing to see you as multi-sensory artist. And one of the things I admire about your work is that your art isn't about the medium. It's really about the soul. It's about you. You are a person who actively cultivates the warm fuzzies of our souls. It's been amazing to see your journey and evolution as you've helped fuel and feed mine too.
Thank you, brother. Thank you.
So, man, I always start off with understanding how people came to be. Tell us about the origin of Darnell Kendricks. So I think about it as to how did your soul grow?
Very interesting. That is an interesting question. I feel at this point of my life, I feel that everything makes sense now. You know what I'm saying? It's like I just crossed over the 50 mark.
Did you just say that out loud?
Oh, yeah. I mean, I'm proud of it. There's only one other option,
Facts.
I feel like I'm now, it seems like everything makes sense now, for my life. I just decided probably within the last couple of months to actually go through therapy. Yeah. So the reason being, when you think about life and how you interpret it, and, I've always been the quote unquote healer of the family.
Right.
I've always been the healer, even amongst my friends. I mean, even my home has been a sanctuary for others, even more so than it has been for myself at times.
Wow.
So my thought process is always for others. And I'm like, man, where did that come from? Where did I take on that role? And then, as life happens and other responsibilities come and self-reflection, I was like, man, I've really given all of my life to the healing of others and not so much myself. And so, I really decided to, it was almost scary because it's like, okay, I sing, I cook, and I do all those other things. I'm an avid reader too. I love literature.
Yeah.
And even reading some of that, the Paul Laurence Dunbar, the Toni Morrison, the Henry Dumas. It's like, man, I'm kind of living my life in a way that they did in terms of taking on all of this responsibility of life and recording it and trying to alleviate. I was like, am I doing the right thing? Am I doing the right thing? Or am I balanced is the bigger question.
That's a good word.
And then I don't want that balancing to prevent me from continuing art and continuing expression. I don't want a healed, more balanced me to mean I'm self-absorbed and I live life for me. To put it real short, because I don't know how long our podcast is, I feel that the soulfulness has come from my love for my people, my love for my family. I think that, and I'm talking about the family at large, the human family. So I think that's where it comes from.
Well, tell me about your blood family too. Like, growing up, because you grew up on the West Coast, right?
Yes, California, Sacramento, California.
Yeah. So, how many siblings? Tell me what it was like growing up in Sacramento and finding your way from sunny California to whatever we want to call Michigan sometimes.
Yeah, the soul town. Yeah. Sacramento, California was kind of like, although it was home for me, I never felt at home there, if that makes sense.
Yep.
I grew up, mother and father, 8 siblings. I was part of the second batch of kids. So I'm the oldest of, the last batch. Sacramento, I always felt like I was passing through. When I was in my early 20s, I moved to the Bay Area, which was more it was more soulful, it's more kind of an urban sort of vibe. I stayed with my grandmother from the age of 20, I think I was 21 through 27 when I moved to Detroit. So, home is there. My mom's still there. My siblings, most of my siblings are still there, with the exception of one, my baby sister, who you know. Sacramento never felt like home to me. Even now, I'll visit, but I always felt most at home in the Bay Area.
Interesting.
And even now, it was very important for me to move to Detroit. I just knew that this is where I was supposed to be.
How'd you know that?
I would say that it's almost kind of like a spiritual thing. I grew up, I'm a church boy. And, everybody knows I grew up Church of God in Christ, and I loved the Clark sisters and all of that. But I always loved Marvin Gaye. I've always loved the Clark sisters, specifically Twinkie. And, just something about their music. I was always like there's something in the water in Detroit. So there was something of Detroit that represented home, our soulfulness to me. And so I always felt that I needed to be here. It's very interesting. It's very, very, very interesting. When I first moved here in 97, my initial intent was to be here, do a recording project, like a demo, and move back. And, here we are over 23 years later, and I'm still here. And I probably would not live anywhere else other than the Bay Area or bicoastally. I couldn't see myself living anywhere else but Detroit.
That's amazing, man.
I needed to be here.
So you felt like a little soul pull. You're like, hey, I got to be in Detroit.
Yeah, I felt, and then for a short period of time, and I'm still trying to get the history of it, when I moved here, I didn't grow up with my biological father, and then I found out, these are not tears, these are just allergies, just for the record. My biological father lived here for a very short period of time, but I had some aunts that lived here. All of my aunts lived here when I moved here in 97.
Really?
I did not meet them and that side of my family until I was 25. So I got a chance to meet all of them. And they've all since passed. Okay. But I got a chance to meet all of them when I lived here, which was very interesting because I had no clue that they were here. Yeah, it's kind of crazy. Yeah.
So when you came, did you say, let me go find this job? I got a place lined up.
Oh, man. It was so divine. When I first moved here, I stayed with a cousin who I had recently met when my dad passed. Okay. And this is so phenomenal how it worked. My sister one day, she called and she said, your dad died and his funeral is tomorrow. It was a Thursday. And so I was thinking she was speaking of the Kendricks, because Kendricks is my quote unquote stepfather's last name. And so no, she said your real father, William Spencer. And I was like, oh man. And so I was more excited than anything because I hadn't seen the guy, in years, since I was probably about 10 years old.
Wow.
So this was a Thursday. The funeral was Friday. So I went from San Francisco to Sacramento to the funeral. There I met, one cousin, Anita, who lived in Detroit. And that's when I was introduced to the rest of the family. And so when I decided to move here, which was just a couple of years later, I ended up staying with my cousin. He said, you can stay here till you get yourself together. Within a month, I had my own job that I still have and my own apartment that I had, within, I think it was 3 weeks when I had a job in an apartment. It was absolutely divine.
Had you been here before?
I came here for the first time in what was it? It was 87.
Oh, wow.
I was, I'm a church boy, as you know, and so the Church of God in Christ had this national youth convention. My first time going to the convention I was 16, and that was in Houston, Texas. And so I got a job at Kentucky Fried Chicken to save up money so I could go the next year, which was here in Detroit, down at the Rinsen. Yeah, so my first time being here, I was 17 years old.
Man, you're putting chicken in buckets so you can get these ducats.
Yeah, exactly. Man. And I'm, to this day, I'm still not tired of fried chicken. You know what
I'm saying? It's wild. I think about so like your food is amazing. We know, y'all don't know this. Some of you might, but this guy in the kitchen, like it's an act of love. Yeah. And I remember the first food I had from you, I think it was chicken and waffles, and it was one of the early recipes for the waffle that has since become probably it's kind of famous in Detroit. Yeah, you have more than a small following.
Yeah, that's true.
For your food porn.
Yes.
So, where did your love of food come from?
Food has always represented a level of comfort, and it's always represented love. Because no matter how tumultuous a house is or a home, when there's food involved, there's always a levity of spirit. It's nourishment. And, I'm pretty much, I would say kind of a food snob in a sense, but, but to the degree that I taste love in food. You can taste when somebody really cares and have selected great ingredients and didn't rush through the process. And, I come from a line of some phenomenal cooks. My great grandmother, who was born in 1894, we called her Mama Lucy. She had a restaurant in Arkansas back in the 30s.
Really?
Yeah. And she's very well documented. There are a lot of newspaper articles in the San Francisco area back in the 40s and 50s where she would do dinners at home and donate 100% of the proceeds to the community chest fund to help the needy, so on and so forth. Yeah. And my oldest brother, Maurice, is a phenomenal cook. Growing up, my mother, she didn't cook much. She's a great cook, but she didn't cook much because she didn't have to. She had children that could cook.
Really?
Oh, yeah.
So your mom wasn't the main cook in the house?
No, she was not. Nope.
How did that work out? Man, so just kind of paint a picture. What's the age range of your siblings?
So there are 5 older siblings.
Okay.
And then there's a 10-year gap.
From the youngest of the 5 to you?
From the youngest of the 5 to me.
Whoa.
And then I have a sister 2 years younger than me, and I have a sister that's 8 years younger than me. Yeah, so
it's a lot of y'all.
Yeah.
And a whole lot of years.
Exactly. Yes.
What's the gap between the oldest and the youngest?
Whew. Okay, so that has to be, my baby sister has nieces older than her. So I think my oldest brother, I think he's probably, I want to say mid-60s maybe.
Okay.
And my baby sister is in the 40ish.
40ish.
Yeah. I think about 40. We'll say 39 for her sake.
She crosses over whenever she crosses over.
Right. Exactly. Yeah.
Man, so you telling me your mom for about 2.5 decades?
All her life. All her life. We talked about it. That's one of the things that was probably about maybe 4 years ago. I decided I call my mother every single day. And, it was an act of love that I decided to do. My oldest sister had at one point taken on the responsibility of being the caretaker for my mother and my dad. And I was like, wow. I said, the least I could do is call my mother every day.
Yeah.
So I called her, we talk every day. And, I got a chance to know her as the human being, just and her human experience beyond the role of a mother.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that's powerful. I think we all owe our parents that, if given the opportunity.
There's a lot of grace in that experience of coming to see your parents as people versus just parents.
Yeah.
I know my parents, man, they let me see behind the veil of the probably my early teens, if not a little bit before. And that's that's part of the life where you just kind of you live in, and it is what it is. You see what you see.
Yeah.
But they were also very intentional with me about helping me to recognize them as just whole people.
Yeah.
And that I can see the impact on our relationship to this day, where we can be friends.
Yes.
And not just mom or dad and son.
Yeah.
What was it like having that experience to get to know your mom at a more, it sounds like it's a good word, it's a more intimate level?
Toni Morrison said, which I thought was so phenomenal, when she wrote, I believe it was Song of Solomon, tended to write from the female perspective. And she said when her dad died, she was able to write from the male perspective. She said, because when a person dies, you immediately have a more intimate relationship with them because their persona is out of the way. And I just thought that was so fascinating to explore that, because there's such a finality when it comes to death. There's no more negotiation. You have to accept what it is. I tried to employ some of that level of appreciation as it related to my mother. I did the same thing with my grandmother, because I lived with her, years before she had passed. And because I was in my 20s and she at that time, I believe late 70s, 80s, I knew how precious it was. So I savored the moment so much more because I knew that it was precious time. And so my mother, being 82, I know beyond a shadow of a doubt how precious the time is. So I do a lot of writing. I wrote, I write a lot of her sayings. There's a lot. She has excellent recall. She just shared with me last night when she was a child, 5 or 6, going to her father's grandmother's funeral. And so I write all of this stuff down because I know how precious it is, not just for me personally, but the family and that level of history. So yeah, it's a beautiful gift, just being able to appreciate her, love on her, respect, and really see the humanity of your mother. That's a beautiful gift to have.
So, as a gifted individual,
Yeah.
I'm curious. So, I'm curious. How has that gift of your mom's truth influenced the other parts of your life?
It's really inspired me to be on my own self-healing journey, because I can recognize within my mother and other family members and other friends, how we never have the tools or the language to really confront certain traumatic events and and joyous events as well. But there are certain things that happen in life that really completely change your perspective on what life is. And what happens if you're able to, quote unquote, confront the boogeyman. How does that how does that change the lineage of the family?
Yeah.
Because I could see certain things, I could see patterns. Because this wasn't dealt with in this generation, 2 and 3 generations removed, I see the same cycles happening.
Wow.
And so, what if we are able to confront it here?
Yeah.
And maybe the healing will lead up. Because, going back to the painting, honoring the mother tongue, that was one of my very first paintings, which is a linear depiction of a mother having her feet washed by her daughters. And behind those daughters are other daughters, their daughters.
Yeah.
And behind the woman having her feet washed are her mother, grandmother, and great-grandmother. And that's what inspired that painting, honoring the mother tongue, honoring our mothers, and honoring the lineage and how they're all one and the same.
That's
so
beautiful, man.
That was a whole inspiration for that particular painting.
Yeah, it's funny. I remember when you shared that painting with me. It inspired me.
Yeah.
It's funny you say I'm so inspired. I wrote a song about it. Want to hear it go?
Yeah.
No, that's beautiful, man. It makes me hearing the idea of understanding heritage as almost like a first step in not just self-love, but really about a tool of dismantling generational curses and generational obstacles, the things that we often hear people say, "You just like your daddy," or "That's just like your granddad," or And we talk about, we say we're individuals, but we don't often see the influence and the things that are passed down through generations. And so I appreciate this idea of understanding as kind of like a first line of defense in helping to change the tide. I think we had a conversation at some point. We talked about culture as a weapon.
Yes, a weapon and a tool.
Yes,
Yeah.
And so I'm thinking about it now as we talk about this idea of dismantling generational obstacles.
Yes,
How has culture and art for you? How have they been tools for you, and certainly in how you approach thinking about family and lineage, but also just how you approach thinking about life and the larger cultural conversations?
Oh, that's a great question. You're asking some great questions, buddy. I'm so proud of you. I think we have to understand that the future is inextricably tied to the past. They're all one. There's a timelessness. The past is not really the past in that sense. We're living. I mean, the whole structures and the way we're living and who you are and how you walk and your likes and dislikes, your proclivities, they're not of your own specifically. They are really tied to the past. I mean, how you move in the world, so on and so forth. And having that understanding and art and literature has given me language. It's interesting to me, as you know, Paul Laurence Dunbar is like my favorite. He's my favorite author. The brother was born in 1872. He died in 1906. He was only 33 years old when he passed. But when I read a lot of his writing and his inner thoughts and his vulnerabilities and his take on the world, it's so much the same as it was. I mean, the joys, the fears, the hurts, the disappointments, they could be 2021, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And it's just phenomenal. It's funny that, he died that long ago, and he just had a book that came out February 9th. It's called The Literary Letters of Paul Laurence Dunbar. So it's a lot of his personal letters that he wrote. And, just his negotiating with being a young black man who was he was an elevator operator. Yeah, as brilliant as this guy was, he was an elevator operator, and his putting himself forward during that time and writing letters and trying to get his work out. But to answer your question, I see that culture is a way in which we interpret the world, and it's a way of thinking.
Yeah.
Art is a way of thinking. Literature is a way of thinking. cooking and partaking, that whole gift of hospitality, that's a way of thinking. And when, being able to understand that and to be conscious of it, I believe makes it much more powerful, because it's in a timeless place. I mean, there are certain things that I do and that I've been gifted to do. I was like, there's no way in my lifetime I could have. No, I mean, I didn't start painting until I was in my late 40s, and now, it's being appreciated, and, I got it hanging up in public places, so on and so forth. I mean, who teaches you how to sing? Who teaches you how to write? Even the recipes that I've come up with, it's like, this is not on my own,
right?
Thinking, my own knowledge. I've been guided, in a way. So I believe that culture represents a timeless space. It just kind of takes something that's timeless and kind of allows you to see a little glimpse of it, so.
That's beautiful, man.
Yeah.
It's funny. Man, it's real deep, brother. No, but I think it's interesting how, when I met you, you were singing and you were cooking.
Yeah.
But the way you cooked in 2005 versus 2010 or 15 or 20.
Is that when we met? 2005?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
January 2005.
Wow.
I know. Oh.
Wow. That's a long time.
It's a long time. I'll take it though. I appreciate lifelong friendships, But the way you cooked then versus 5 years after, when you started, people started asking to pay you to cook, and then you're having pop-up restaurants.
Yes. And you started that. You guys started that Mother's Day meal.
Oh man, that was great. That was a good meal.
Yeah.
God. You did 7 courses that day.
Yeah.
7. Yeah, I'm not going to talk about the food because if I do, it's really unfair to the rest of you. It was amazing. So, what's it been like evolving your forms of expression over time? And I think about that. Certainly, we could talk about a single medium like food, where it's grown and your palate has grown, your capacity has grown, but over time you've also expanded the mediums that you explore. What's it been like evolving your artistic expression over time? And how have you kind of fed that growth?
It's one of those things. I think it's the downside of being quote unquote gifted, because at a certain point you don't know to take responsibility for the gifting because it's so natural.
Right.
It's been a difficult thing for me. I remember I had a friend, I had cooked for her a couple of years ago, and she said, "Darnell, you are not ever be broke." She said the big thing. I was like, she's right, because it is oftentimes, difficult for me to balance the gifting with capitalism, and charging the right prices and, putting the right value on it is what I do. The art has been the easiest,
really, because
it's tangible.
Okay.
All of my other gifts are not so tangible. They deal with other senses, but art is a product. It's a painting. It's it could be framed. It could be hung. So that has I'm allowing that to inform the other parts of it.
Interesting.
But that's and then there's a responsibility to that as well. I heard Maya Angelou say one time that she's not modest. He said it was weird. She said, "I'm not modest at all." I was like, where is this coming from? Where's she going? But she said modesty is like a garment that falls off when life hits you. She said, I think she said like a G-string from a stripper. She said, "I am, however, humble." She said, "I'm full of humility. Humility says that somebody paved the way for me to be here." Speaking of the ancestral lineage. And so I must be here and show up in all of my greatness so that I can pave the way for someone else.
Yeah.
So I think at this point in my life, I've been much more conscious about the responsibility associated with the gifts. And that's much more, it's like, I don't know what's going to happen at 70, what I'll be doing then.
Right.
Maybe, I don't know. Maybe I'll be stripping. I don't know.
Please. I want to say nobody wants that, but you know what? The way you cook, I'm confident that there's some people out there who say, if you give me a waffle and some chicken, you can take off whatever you want to take off.
We won't be doing that. All right about it. But yeah, it's I can say more than anything, I've learned to take responsibility for the gift more than anything else. I think that has been the most pronounced for me.
That's a really powerful concept. It's as I think everybody has gifts. Like that is a God thing. We are given gifts, and what we do with them is up to us. How many we have. Like we can talk about the various parables and scriptures that talk about gifting.
And talents,
right? And it's really easy to lean back and say, I do this well, and allow that to just be exactly what it is. Yeah. It's a different thing when you say to take responsibility. Yeah. And when I hear that, let me know if I'm hearing this appropriately. It says, not only am I responsible for the output of my gifts, meaning, I can wield my gifts as I see fit. Example, you have muscles. If I push hard, I'm responsible to judge the amount of strength required for whatever pushing I'm doing. But it also means that I might be mindful, being intentional about how I leverage my gifts.
Absolutely.
And I think the third thing is intentional about growing my gifts. Because it's easy to say, like I said, it's easy to say I'm good at something and allow that to just be. Yeah. It's another thing to say, I have a natural proclivity towards something. I have an affinity towards something. I am gifted in this area. And as you said, being humble about it, somebody paved the way and allows me to be in this space.
Yes.
I'm responsible for my gifts, and I'm also, to a certain degree, accountable to the folks who created a pathway for me to actually be able to display my gifts. Yeah. And perhaps I should go deeper to make them better and develop them.
Exactly.
As you see fit.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So how have you been grooming your gifts?
I guess we would have to break them down to each one.
Fair.
I think I'm at a point. What I'm plugged into, and I think it comes along with a certain level of maturity. I am conscious of the fact that I'm very much more conscious now than I would have been 5 or maybe 10 years ago, that what it is that I'm doing is going to outlive me. And 10, 20, 30, 50 years after my death, what it is that I do will possibly be analyzed or studied or appreciated by other people. Sure. So I'm kind of at a point right now where, especially when it comes to the food, that's such a natural thing for me that I have been writing down my recipes, a little bit more deliberately. And there's a lady, she wrote a book. It's called, it's two. It's Recipe for Respect, and then there's another one called Aunt Jemima Code, where she took all of these. Yeah, it's very interesting. She took all of this particular, I think Templeton is the Aunt Jemima Code. She took a lot of different African American cooks from the early, the mid to late 1800s, who wrote books on hospitality and on drinks and sauces and foods and things of that nature. And I was like, man, how cool to go back and look, because there's a sense of history there. Yeah. So I think I've been more so than refining them. I think because refining is always a process. I'm always guided by the final product. I'm always guided by love. I'm always guided by wanting to present excellence. I'm always guided by that. So whatever that means. Sure. Whatever that experience means, and the feedback that I receive, but more so the documentation. I really, it's easy to do it in art, to a degree, because I've never went to art school, culinary school, or anything. But a lot of my art, I was like, man, when I look back at it, I'm like, man, I couldn't imagine, like, how did I think to do that? You know, like with the Mama Lucy's bake sale painting, which I named after my great grandmother. When I had, it's a 3-foot board, 24 by 36, but I knew for some reason the table that I wanted, it had to be absolutely in the center of the painting aesthetically and build around it. So I made a big brown table, and that was just something I knew that had to be done. So if someone ever asks me, your eyes immediately go to the table,
Right.
and then there are, the figurines, around it. So it's very interesting. That question is a good question. I'm always guided by love. I'm always guided by the feeling that I want people to get from it, or the takeaway.
Yeah.
I'm always guided by that. Even with cooking, one of the interesting things about cooking is the element of surprise. Because a chicken is a chicken is a chicken, but if you use a kind of a little Asian spice, a little cinnamon or allspice with garlic, it's like, oh man, now it's an experience.
Right.
So I'm always guided by that. Creating those experiences.
That's really cool. That's actually, I'm hungry again.
Yeah.
Now, thank you. I'm glad I ate before this one. Otherwise, I'd be mad at you. And it's, like I said, it's cool to have seen the evolution of the forms, especially because I think I've seen you invest more and more in the cooking and the art in particular.
Yeah.
Just in terms of like time and energy.
I can tell you why.
Oh,
because the cooking and the art, I'm in total control. It's extremely interior. My music requires other people.
Interesting.
Just think about it.
Yeah.
It requires musicians, and I don't necessarily play. It requires studio time.
Yep.
And I can write and write all day, but unless I have someone else,
Right.
I can't bring it into fruition. But when it comes to my writing, when it comes to my cooking, and when it comes to my art, it's very interior. I don't need anyone else for that.
I think it's so interesting to hear you say that because, even as we talk about your home earlier being a haven for people.
Yeah.
You're a person who attracts people and you're surrounded by a community.
Yeah.
So it's interesting to hear, these expressions being things that you can control.
Yeah.
Like where you're not beholden, I guess is the better way
Yeah.
to put it. You're not beholden to someone else's time, at least.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So I got a couple more questions for you, man. So one is just thinking about, you talked about love being the center of how you express. And I think it's true for everything we've talked about so far, whether it's going back to lineage, the way you embrace the ancestors and their words. It's love's at the center. What's the message that you want to leave? Like, as you think about your expressions, is there an overarching theme or unifying message across?
I believe that one of the themes is love.
Sure.
Another that I think is extremely important is that we owe a debt.
Ooh.
I believe that we all act according to what we are indebted to. And I feel that we have a great debt to those that came before that loved us, that continued to show up for life, that continued to persevere even in their failings. They still showed up.
Yeah.
Even though they were not quote unquote perfect, they did the best they could. And that too is also love.
Yeah.
And so I feel a huge debt to those that have come before us. And I would like for my work and all that I do to always point back to that debt. Who are you indebted to? And I think it's difficult to really get to that unless we can name it. Meaning, who is your grandparents? Who are your great-grandparents? What one of the things that was very easy for me is when I was reading Paul Laurence Dunbar, the Henry Dumas, my other people, is when my great-grandmother, like I said, she was born in 1894, which was interesting. It's the same year that my grandfather on my father's side was born. They were born in 1894. And I had talked to him on the phone. I never met him in person. My great-grandmother I knew.
Right.
And so I'm like, man, this was their world was like when they were born.
Wow.
So it allowed me, in terms of history, to hang my memory on something. So then you think about they had grandparents and they had parents, and and you realize that you're connected to all of that. But I believe that we all have to ask the question: who are we indebted to? Why do we do what we do? or don't do what we do.
Sure.
So I would like for everything that I do to encourage and inspire people to know that we have a huge debt. We have a huge debt.
That's good. So that in mind, thinking about you, thinking about the ancestors, and thinking about the message that you are sharing actively. So today, right now, this moment, I ask everybody this question. This right now is the youngest you will ever be again.
Yes.
Ever.
Yes.
Right now.
Yeah.
Right now.
Right.
And right now.
Right.
Who do you want to be when you grow up?
Oh, wow. I want to be a person who has lived courageously. Bottom line, everything falls under that umbrella.
You know you can't just leave it that like that. You can't do that to us.
Oh man, let's see. I want to exhaust all of my gifts. I want to see some measurable. I want to delve deep. Even part of my inspiration for wanting to go through therapy and deal with some sort of healing, which was kind of an interesting thing. I want to go through therapy so I could be an example of how my family could heal, our other families, our other people. So, I'm interested in dipping beneath the surface of the water, knowing that I can, I got a anchor to get back up, you know.
Fair.
But I just want to be more courageous with that in everything that I do. I just want to be more courageous. And I believe when Eric Roberson came to the house and you brought him over, and he asked me, send me the question. He said, out of all of your gifts, what is it that you want to do that you haven't done?
Yeah.
And remember my response, which startled me, was I want to be able to live in the moment more. And I feel that there is that of emotional, spiritual healing that allows you to live in the moment. And I don't believe that I do that enough.
Sure.
And I believe that there's a level of courage that comes along with that. You understand what I'm saying? So, I want to be more courageous. I can't. I don't have anything more specific than that.
I promise you that was good.
Yeah.
All right. First of all, I mean, I always appreciate your time and being able to spend time with you. You talked about what you're trying to. You've got so much going on. It is a joy to watch and see the evolution of the man from black to gray. So as you think about where you're going and who you're becoming, what are you doing in order to become that man? In this case, more courageous. And the follow up to that is how can between me, our listeners, and our viewers, how can we support you on that journey?
It's going back to what I said earlier. It was a very, very small thing. I mean, you've been in my home for many years. I bought my house 18 years ago, and they had old windows that's in the house. So I got one of the windows in my bedroom replaced, and I was so doggone fascinated because the window was replaced because it was old, like the box windows. My backyard looks so absolutely beautiful with the snow. And I took a picture of the sunset, and I was like, I've been here 18 years. I have never seen the sunset. And because, I couldn't see out the window that way because of the kind of windows it was. So I'm really excited I believe we all need that temple. We all need that sanctuary at home.
Yeah.
We all need that safe place that a cathedral, if you will, you know. And so I really want to continue to create that space in my home, in my world. And I think that, how people can do that, or, how they can support or help, not just me specifically, but be conscious enough to, no matter how crazy the world is, you should be able to come home to peace. You should be able to come home to love. I started collecting African American literature a few years ago, and I don't know if you've been over to the house, but I have a whole bookcase of. Oh yeah, you've been here. So I want my home, to become a cafe / library / museum, So no matter where I go in the world and visit, and I do plan on doing some more traveling when the world opens back up, but I want to bring those beautiful experiences back home. I really want to, that backyard, seeing the backyard a couple of weeks ago gave me an idea. I'm going to get a privacy fence, and I want to do like a Japanese garden sort of hook up back there,
like like a Zen space.
Yes, something to that degree. So I believe our joy and our fulfillment is inward. And no matter where we go, what our zip code is, if you can't come home, I don't want to have to go to Cancun for peacefulness. I mean, it's nice. Europe is nice. Jamaica is nice. But I want to bring those experiences back home. And I really want to do that more intentionally, more deliberately. I want people from Cancun or New York or California to want to come to my house and have a desire to come there and get away.
Well, if I show some of the pictures of your food in this podcast, they might be trying to come to your house anyway.
Yeah, I just did a dinner for Valentine's Day.
Nice.
Yeah, I did a Valentine's Day dinner, and I'm excited though. I'm excited about the future. I'm excited about now. I'm excited about the creating from the inside out. I really am.
Man,
I really am.
That is inspiring. You have plucked a lot of strings here for sure. The idea of creating from the inside out. I've been doing some reading, lots of reading lately, and this idea of our ability, the accountability of owning our peace.
Yes.
Of owning our beings.
Yes. Yeah.
I'm a person who believes in self-reflection. Like that moment in the mirror is always the most important moment when you stare back and say, "Who am I?"
Yes.
And coming to accept who you are and embrace it.
Yes.
But the next level is the level of accountability of owning self, not just recognizing, but now owning.
Yeah.
And then taking ownership, now taking action.
Yeah.
To how do you cultivate peace inwardly first, and then allowing that peace to. I was going to say ooze out. Ooze it's such a funny word to say. But
illuminate.
It's a great word to illuminate, so that when you walk, it's not about you having to say or touch or do.
Right.
It just radiates from you.
Right.
And so I appreciate that, and I will be carrying that with me.
Yes.
So, man, thank you so much. I appreciate your time.
This is great.
Yeah. Oh man, we could do this. I've got a million other questions that have been sparked by this conversation, but I will allow us to put a piece of punctuation here.
That's cool.
Anything else you want to leave us with?
No, I really appreciate this opportunity. I love that you're doing this. This is amazing. This is like one of our regular conversations.
I told you we're just going to sit down and have a conversation. Yeah. And imagine all the things we could have talked about.
Right, exactly. Yeah.
You know what? I haven't done this with anybody else. I'm probably going to invite you back.
Okay.
I'm going to invite other people back too, because we've had great guests.
Yeah.
I am curious about a deeper conversation about how we can apply art as a tool to bring about healing and help folks grow.
Yeah.
But that's for a later episode.
Yeah, I like that.
Yeah.
I got some ideas already.
I bet you do. All right. That being said, we are signing off. Thank you so much, Darnell. Appreciate you.
All right. Thank you.
All right. You've been tuned in to Becoming Better with Jeff Ponders. Special thank you to our guests for this episode and to our partners Mammoth Studios and the Cochran House. We appreciate you for joining us on this journey toward a better life from the inside out. See you soon.